The Zulus came on at a steady run, about 400 yards away. We could hear them above the din of battle. A low, murmuring sound. That's how Corporal William Allen described the moment 20,000 Zulu warriors emerged from the Nyoni Hills on January 22, 1879. Within 5 hours, this disciplined African army would achieve complete tactical victory against one of Europe's most experienced colonial forces. But how did they do it? In 1879, the British Empire controlled a quarter of the world's landmass. Their military technology was unmatched. Breech-loading rifles, artillery, and decades of colonial warfare experience. Standing in their way was the Zulu Kingdom under King Cetshwayo, a centralized military state with 40,000 trained warriors. The collision was inevitable. On January 11th, Lord Chelmsford crossed into Zululand with 3 columns totaling 15,000 men. His objective: locate and destroy the Zulu army in one decisive engagement. What happened next became one of military history's greatest upsets. If you enjoy detailed military history, subscribe for more in-depth battle analyses. Chelmsford established his main camp at the base of Isandlwana mountain. The position offered good visibility, but violated a fundamental military principle. The camp wasn't fortified. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Pauline commanded 1,329 men. 6 companies of the 24th Regiment of Foot Native Infantry Battalions, colonial volunteers, 2 7-pounder artillery pieces. Meanwhile, the Zulu High Command was making its own calculations. Commanders Nshingwayo Kamahol and Mavumengwana Kanthati had positioned 20,000 warriors in the Nyoni Hills, just 5 miles from the British camp. This wasn't a random gathering. It was a carefully coordinated force organized into specific regiments. The Ukandempemvu, married men, veterans. The Ingobamakosi, young warriors, highly motivated. The Unobenkenla, reserves. January 21st, the Zulu army performed ritual preparations and received final orders. The plan was classic Zulu tactics, the Impondo Zonkomo, or Horns Formation. Dawn, January 22nd. At 8 a.m., Lieutenant Charles Raw's mounted infantry spotted Zulu forces on the Nyoni Ridge. What Raw discovered defied British expectations. "We saw the Zulu army sitting in dead silence," reported Trooper Barker. "Regiment upon regiment, as far as the eye could see." This wasn't the mobile, elusive enemy Chelmsford expected to hunt down. This was a conventional army, positioned and ready for battle. Raw immediately sent word to Pauline. Large Zulu force sighted. Estimated strength, 20,000. 11:30 a.m. The Zulu advance begins. The formation was textbook military science. Center chest advances directly toward the British line. Left horn moves to outflank the British right. Right horn sweeps wide to attack from behind. This wasn't primitive warfare. It was sophisticated military tactics. Each regiment had specific objectives and maintained cohesion throughout the advance. British observers noted the disciplined nature of the attack. The British firing line extended roughly 1 mile. Companies positioned at 150-yard intervals. Initial volleys were devastating. Martini Henry rifles were accurate to 400 yards. "The Zulus were falling in heaps," wrote Lieutenant Curling, but the Zulu commanders had studied British tactics. They advanced in loose formation to minimize casualties from concentrated fire. Small groups used available cover: anthills, rocks, dongas, gullies. British ammunition began running low. The quartermaster wagons were positioned 400 yards behind the firing line. Ammunition boxes were secured with metal bands that required time to break open. "We were calling for ammunition, but it was slow in coming," recalled Private Grant. As British fire slackened, Zulu warriors closed the distance rapidly. The left horn had successfully outflanked the British right. Captain Young Husband's company, positioned on the extreme right, was overwhelmed first. Once the flank collapsed, the entire British position became untenable. Lieutenant Colonel Pillane ordered a fighting withdrawal, but coordination was lost. Individual companies fought isolated actions as Zulu regiments pressed their advantage. "It was every man for himself," wrote survivor Private Williams. The artillery crews fought to the end. Lieutenant Curling managed to withdraw one gun, but the second was overrun. The retreat became a rout. Zulu warriors pursued fleeing soldiers across the Buffalo River and surrounding countryside. Of the 1,329 men encamped that morning, only 55 Europeans survived. Zulu casualties were estimated at 1,000–3,000, significant but sustainable. 2 p.m. The battle was over. When Lord Chelmsford returned that evening, he found his central column had ceased to exist as a fighting force. So what went wrong for the British? First, intelligence failure. Chelmsford completely misread Zulu intentions and capabilities. Second, tactical dispersion. The British line was too extended for the available manpower. Third, logistical breakdown. The ammunition supply system failed under pressure. Fourth, underestimating the enemy. British commanders expected to face undisciplined tribal fighters, not a coordinated military force. From the Zulu perspective, what went right? Strategic patience. 20,000 men remained concealed until the optimal moment. Tactical coordination. Multiple regiments executed complex maneuvers simultaneously. Adaptive tactics. Zulu forces adjusted their approach based on British defensive measures. Leadership. Field commanders maintained control throughout the engagement. This was conventional military success achieved through superior planning and execution. News of Isandlwana reached London on February 11th. The British press struggled to explain how a modern European force could be defeated by indigenous African warriors. "The disaster was complete," reported the Times. Queen Victoria immediately authorized reinforcements. An additional 10,000 troops were dispatched to South Africa. The Zulu perspective was different. King Cetshwayo had achieved his strategic objective, demonstrating that his kingdom could defend itself. Isandlwana demonstrated several important military principles. Technology doesn't guarantee victory. Superior weapons mean nothing without proper tactics and logistics. Intelligence is crucial. Knowing your enemy's capabilities and intentions determines success or failure. Discipline wins battles. The Zulu army's coordination and patience were decisive factors. Leadership matters. Cetshwayo and Mavamengwana outmaneuvered their British counterparts. The battle influenced military thinking globally. European armies began reassessing their colonial warfare doctrines. The importance of proper reconnaissance and intelligence gathering was reinforced. Logistical planning received renewed emphasis. For African military history, Isandlwana was unprecedented. It proved that indigenous African forces could defeat European armies through superior tactics and preparation. January 22nd, 1879. The day Africa proved itself. King Cetshwayo and his commanders achieved something that resonated across the entire continent. They proved that African military genius could defeat European imperial power. Within months, news of Isandlwana spread from Cairo to Cape Town. Ethiopian Emperor Johannes IV cited the Zulu victory when planning his own resistance. Modest forces in Sudan drew inspiration from Zulu tactics. "If the Zulus can defeat the British, so can we," became a rallying cry across Africa. This wasn't just a military victory. It was proof that indigenous African societies possess sophisticated military knowledge, strategic thinking, and organizational capability. The Battle of Isandlwana shattered European assumptions about African warfare. It demonstrated that when African leaders had time to prepare and chose their ground, they could outthink and outfight any colonial army. King Cetshwayo didn't just win a battle, he inspired a continent. This is why we tell these stories. African military history is filled with brilliant strategists, innovative tactics, and incredible victories that changed the course of history. Hit subscribe to discover more untold stories of African resistance and military genius. What other African military leaders would you like us to cover? Drop your suggestions in the comments below. The warriors who fought at Isandlwana were defending their homeland, their culture, and their right to exist as a free people. They succeeded. For one glorious day, African military excellence triumphed over European imperial ambition. That legacy lives on. Thanks for watching. And remember, history belongs to those brave enough to fight for their freedom.